I drove through the mountains desperate for silence, only to find my sister's glossy SUV parked in my driveway like she owned the place. I thought the sleek, cold kitchen remodel was the biggest shock, until she smiled and admitted she used my credit cards to pay for it. She called it an upgrade. I called it theft. Standing there, listening to her justify spending nearly $60,000 of my money, I realized this was not family. This was war. My name is Gabrielle Roberts, and for the last 365 days, I had been existing in a state of high-functioning delirium. I was 38 years old, a senior project lead for a biomedical technology conglomerate based out of Zurich, and I had forgotten what my own heartbeat sounded like when it was not thumping against my ribs in a panic. The past year had been a blur of sterile laboratories, red-eye flights across the Atlantic, and Zoom calls that stretched into the early hours of the morning. I had managed the rollout of a new diagnostic imaging protocol that was currently being integrated into hospitals from Berlin to Boston, but the cost of that success was my sanity. I was burnt out. I was not just tired, I was eroded. My soul felt like a piece of sea glass that had been tumbled in the rough surf for too long, smooth but diminishing with every wave. When I finally landed in Montana, renting a nondescript sedan at the airport because I did not want to wait for a shuttle, I felt the first true breath of air fill my lungs in months. It was crisp, smelling of pine needles and damp earth, a stark contrast to the recycled oxygen of pressurized airplane cabins. I had 2 weeks, 14 glorious days of absolutely nothing. I had set my email auto-reply to a message so vague it bordered on rude, and I had deleted the Slack app from my phone before the plane wheels had even touched the tarmac. My destination was my sanctuary. A cabin nestled deep in the woods near the fictional-sounding town of Pinewater Ridge. It was the only tangible thing my grandmother had left me. Purchased with the inheritance she had meticulously saved for decades, when she passed, she bypassed my mother, Elaine, and my younger sister, Kendra, leaving the bulk of her estate to me with a note that simply said, "For the one who does the work." I had taken that money and that trust seriously. I bought the land and the shell of the cabin, and then I spent every vacation day for 3 years finishing it. I knew every knot in the pine floorboards because I had sanded them down on my hands and knees until my fingers bled. I knew exactly how the morning light hit the reading nook in the loft because I had framed the window myself. It was not just a house. It was the physical manifestation of my independence. It was the one place on earth where nobody asked me for anything. The drive up the winding mountain roads was supposed to be a decompression chamber. I gripped the steering wheel, letting the tension bleed out of my shoulders as the dense forest swallowed the road. I had fantasized about this arrival for months. I would pull up, unlock the heavy oak front door, drop my bags, and open a bottle of red wine. I would sit on the back deck and watch the sun dip below the tree line, listening to the silence. No emails, no meetings, no family drama, just me and the mountains. I turned off the main highway and onto the gravel access road that led up to my property. The tires crunched satisfyingly over the stones. The cabin was set back about half a mile from the main road, hidden behind a thick screen of spruce and fir trees. You could not see it from the street, which was exactly how I liked it. Privacy was the ultimate luxury. As I rounded the final bend, about 200 yards from the property line, my foot hovered over the brake. The gate was open. My stomach did not just drop, it plummeted. I always locked the gate, always. It was a heavy, reinforced steel barrier secured with a heavy-duty padlock that required a physical key, and there was only one key in existence. It lived on my keychain, currently dangling from the ignition of my rental car. I had never made a copy. I did not want guests. I did not want drop-ins. I slowed the car to a crawl, my mind racing through rationalizations that made no sense. Had I left it open the last time I was here? 6 months ago? Impossible. I was obsessive about security. Had a utility worker cut the lock? There were no power lines down, no scheduled maintenance. I rolled the car through the open gate, the gravel popping loudly under my tires. As the cabin came into view, The breath I had been holding seized in my throat. There was a car in my driveway. It was not a utility truck. It was not a police cruiser. It was a white, glossy SUV, shimmering incongruously against the rustic backdrop of my hand-hewn log cabin. It looked like a spaceship that had landed in the wrong century. I knew that car. I knew it intimately because I had wired $5,000 to the dealership 18 months ago to cover the down payment. It was Kendra's car, my younger sister. The confusion that washed over me was so thick it felt like dizziness. Kendra lived in Seattle, or maybe Portland, or wherever she had drifted to after her last breakup. We had not spoken in 3 months. Not since I told her I could not bail her out of a credit card debt she had racked up buying designer handbags she called investments. What was she doing here? How did she get past the gate I put the rental car in park? But I did not turn off the engine immediately. I sat there, staring at the white SUV. It was parked haphazardly, taking up 2 spaces, angled aggressively as if it owned the gravel it sat on. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a fast, erratic rhythm that had nothing to do with altitude and everything to do with dread. Maybe she is in trouble. A voice in my head whispered. It was the old voice, the one trained by decades of family dynamics to assume the role of the savior. Maybe she needed a place to hide. Maybe she is hurt. But as I looked closer, the dread shifted into something colder. The car was clean. There was no mud on the wheel wells. This was not the vehicle of someone fleeing a disaster in a panic. It was the vehicle of someone who had arrived in comfort. I killed the engine and stepped out into the mountain air. The silence I had craved was there, but now it felt heavy, charged with a static electricity that made the hair on my arms stand up. I walked toward the porch, my boots thudding softly on the ground. That was when I saw the doormat. My doormat. A sturdy, rough-hewn choir mat that simply said, "Leave your worries outside," was gone. In its place was a bright, synthetic mat with a picture of a cartoon owl and the words, "Who is home?" written in a loopy cursive font. I stopped dead at the bottom of the stairs. It was such a small thing, a $30 item from a discount home goods store, but it felt like a slap in the face. It was tacky, it was cheap, and it was decidedly not mine. I reached into my pocket and closed my hand around my keys, the metal biting into my palm. I needed to see inside. I needed to understand why my sister was here, how she had gotten in, and why she felt comfortable enough to change my exterior decor. I took the stairs 2 at a time, anger beginning to mix with the adrenaline. I reached for the door handle, fully intending to unlock it and demand answers. But I never got the chance to use my key. Before I could even slide the metal into the lock, the latch clicked from the inside. The heavy oak door swung inward, revealing the warm, golden light of the interior. And there she was. Kendra stood in the doorway, framed by the light like she was posing for a lifestyle magazine cover. She was wearing a cashmere lounge set that probably cost more than my first car. Her hair perfectly blown out in loose waves. She looked rested. She looked healthy. She looked entirely too comfortable. In her right hand, she held a ceramic mug, my ceramic mug. It was a handcrafted piece I had bought from a local artisan in Pinewater Ridge, glazed in a deep, moody indigo that matched the twilight sky. I loved that mug. I only used it for my morning coffee on the deck. Kendra cradled it casually, bringing it to her lips as she looked at me. Her eyes widened, but not with fear or guilt. There was no shame in her expression. Instead, her face broke into a bright, dazzling smile, the kind of smile a hostess gives a guest who has arrived for a dinner party. "Gabrielle," she exclaimed, her voice light and airy, "you are home early." She stepped back, sweeping her free arm wide to usher me inside, moving with the practiced grace of someone inviting a stranger into their domain. Come in. Do not just stand there letting the bugs in." I stood frozen on the threshold, my brain misfiring. Home early. This was my home. I was not early. I was the owner, and she was acting as if she had been expecting me, as if my arrival was a pleasant surprise rather than a confrontation. I stepped past her, the smell of the cabin hitting me instantly. But it was wrong. The scent of cedar and old books that usually greeted me was gone. Masked by something cloyingly sweet vanilla and artificial lavender, she had plugged in air fresheners. My cabin smelled like a mall candle shop. I walked into the living room, my eyes darting around, trying to process the visual data. The structure was the same, the high vaulted ceilings, the stone fireplace, but the soul of the room had been altered. My heavy wool throw blankets were gone, replaced by flimsy, decorative ones in shades of beige and cream. My stack of Architectural Digest magazines on the coffee table had been replaced by celebrity gossip tabloids. A framed photo of Kendra, one I had never seen before, sat prominently on the mantel above the fireplace, right where my antique clock used to be. I turned back to look at her. She was closing the door, humming a little tune, completely unbothered by my stunned silence. "Kendra," I said, my voice sounding raspy, foreign to my own ears. "What are you doing here?" She turned, leaning against the doorframe, sipping from my mug. "Oh, you know," she said vaguely, waving her hand. "Just needed a break. City life was getting too toxic. I needed to center myself." She said it with such conviction, using the buzzwords of wellness she picked up from Instagram influencers. "How did you get in?" I asked, my grip on my keys tightening until my knuckles turned white. "The gate was locked. The house was locked. I have the only key," Kendra laughed, a tinkling sound that grated against my nerves. "Oh, Gabby, do not be dramatic. You know Mom has a spare key to the gate in her emergency box. I just borrowed it, and the house I called a locksmith. Told him I lost my keys. He was so sweet. Opened it up in 10 minutes. She said it so casually. I called a locksmith. She had broken in. She had hired a professional to break into my house, and she was recounting it like a funny anecdote. "You broke in," I stated, the reality settling over me like a lead blanket. "I did not break in," she scoffed, rolling her eyes. "I am family. You cannot break into your family's house. Besides, look at this place. It was sitting here empty. It was practically begging for some life." She walked past me, heading toward the kitchen, her slippers shuffling softly on the pine floors I had restored. "Come on," she called out over her shoulder. "I was just making tea. Do you want some? We have so much to catch up on." I watched her walk away, a cold knot forming in the pit of my stomach. This was not a visit. She had not just crashed here for a night because she was stranded. The photo on the mantel, the air fresheners, the locksmith, the way she moved through the space with possessive familiarity. She had not just entered my cabin. She had moved in. I followed her toward the kitchen, my boots feeling heavy as lead. I thought I was walking into a sanctuary, a place to heal from the bruising demands of the world. Instead, I was walking into a crime scene where the perpetrator was my own flesh and blood. And as I crossed the threshold into the kitchen, prepared to argue, prepared to kick her out, I saw it. I saw what she had done to the heart of my home. And for the first time in my life, I truly understood the difference between a family member making a mistake and a predator staking a claim. The realization hit me harder than the mountain air I had not come home. I had walked into a trap that had been set months ago. I stepped fully into the living room, the space that had served as the anchor for my mental health for the past 3 years, and felt a wave of disorientation so strong it was almost physical. It was like walking into a room in a dream where everything is familiar yet fundamentally wrong. The architecture was still mine. The rough-hewn beams I had sealed myself still spanned the ceiling. The stone fireplace still dominated the far wall, but the atmosphere had been surgically altered. My grandmother's hand-stitched quilt, a patchwork of faded blues and grays that smelled of lavender and history, was gone. In its place, draped artfully over the leather sofa, was a chunky knit throw in a blindingly bright cream color. It looked like something from a catalog page titled Winter Hygge, generic and soulless. I walked toward the coffee table. My stack of dog-eared architectural journals and local hiking guides had vanished. Instead, There was a fan of glossy magazines featuring celebrities I barely recognized and headlines screaming about diets and divorces. Beside them sat a crystal bowl filled with potpourri that reeked of artificial cinnamon. I never bought potpourri. I hated clutter. My eyes drifted to the mantel. That was where I kept a small, antique clock that had belonged to my grandfather. It was a simple piece, mahogany and brass, and its rhythmic ticking had always been the heartbeat of the cabin. The clock was gone. In its place stood a large, framed photograph of Kendra. It was a professional headshot, heavily retouched, where she was laughing candidly at something off-camera. Her hair catching the light just so. It was an aggressive object. It did not just sit there. It dominated the room. It stared down at the rest of the furniture like a dictator surveying a conquered territory. "Kendra," I said, my voice tight. I turned to face her. She was still holding my mug, leaning against the archway with that maddeningly relaxed posture. "What did you do to my living room? Where is my clock?" She took a sip of tea, her eyes crinkling in a smile that did not quite reach the rest of her face. "Oh, that dusty old thing, I put it in a box in the shed. It was so loud. Gabby, tick, tick, tick all night long. It was driving me crazy. I needed a sanctuary, not a time bomb." "You put a family heirloom in the shed?" I asked, the volume of my voice rising despite my best efforts to control it. "And you still have not answered my first question. Why are you here? Why are you living in my house?" Kendra sighed, a long, tragic exhalation that made her shoulders slump. She walked over to the sofa and collapsed onto it, pulling the generic cream blanket around her legs. "I told you," she said, her voice dropping to a whispery register she always used when she needed something. "I am just staying here for a bit, to decompress. My life in the city just fell apart. Gabby, it was awful." I stood over her, refusing to sit. I knew this script. I had heard variations of it for 15 years. "What happened this time?" I asked, though I already knew the beats of the story before she spoke them. "My landlord was a psycho," she said, her eyes widening with feigned innocence. "He raised the rent by 40% with zero notice, just pure greed. I tried to reason with him, but he threatened to evict me if I did not pay up within 48 hours. I had nowhere to go. I was going to be on the street." She looked up at me, blinking rapidly, trying to summon moisture in her eyes. "And I thought of you. I knew you were in Europe saving the world, and this place was just sitting here, empty and cold. It felt like a waste. I thought, why not watch the place for her, keep the pipes from freezing, keep the lights on? It is a win-win." It was a masterclass in manipulation. She hit every trigger point she knew I had. My guilt over being successful while she struggled, my fear of wasting resources, my protective instinct. For a second, just a split second, I felt the familiar softening in my chest. She is my little sister. She was desperate. She had nowhere else to go. But then I looked at the coffee table again. I looked at the magazines that cost $9 apiece. I looked at her cashmere lounge set. People who are about to be on the street do not buy current issues of fashion magazines. They do not look this well groomed. I turned away from her, needing to break her gaze. I walked over to the side table near the entryway where I kept a small woven basket for mail. I had a service that forwarded my essential mail to the cabin when I was away for long periods, mostly bank statements and property tax notices. The basket was there, but it looked different. Usually, the envelopes were stacked neatly. Now, they were a chaotic jumble. I picked up the pile. It felt light, too light for 3 months of accumulation. I riffled through them. Junk mail, a flyer for a local pizza place, a catalog for outdoor gear, another junk mail. "Where is the rest of it?" I asked, my back to her. "The rest of what?" Kendra asked from the sofa. "The mail," I said, turning around, holding up the thin stack. "The bank statements, the utility bills, the property tax assessment, they all come here." Kendra waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, I do not know. That is all that came. Maybe the post office messed up. You know how rural delivery is. I looked down at the basket again. At the bottom, crushed under the junk mail, was a single envelope from my bank. It had been ripped open, not neatly sliced with a letter opener, but torn jaggedly across the top. It was empty. A cold prickle of suspicion danced down my spine. My sister was chaotic. Yes, she was irresponsible with money. Yes, but she had never been a thief, or at least, I had never let myself believe she was one. "Kendra," I said slowly, holding up the empty envelope. "Why is this open?" She glanced at it and shrugged. "I probably opened it by accident. I was waiting for a new credit card and just tore into everything without looking. Sorry." "You were waiting for a credit card here?" I asked. "At my address?" She froze for a microsecond. It was so fast that if I had blinked, I would have missed it. "No," she corrected herself quickly. I thought it was a letter from Mom. I was waiting for a letter from Mom." My mother had not written a physical letter since 1998. Before I could press her, Kendra stood up abruptly, shedding the blanket. The energy in the room shifted instantly. She clapped her hands together, her face brightening with a manic sort of enthusiasm. "Stop focusing on the boring stuff," she cried, rushing over to me and grabbing my arm. Her grip was tight, her nails digging slightly into my skin through my sweater. "You are missing the best part. I have been dying to show you. Come on." She pulled me toward the kitchen. I resisted for a moment, my feet planted on the rug, but her momentum was too great. She dragged me through the dining area, past the heavy oak table I had bought at an estate sale, and toward the kitchen archway. "I wanted it to be a surprise," she chattered, her voice high and fast. "I knew you were coming back exhausted, and I wanted to do something nice for you, something to say thank you for letting me stay." "Kendra, wait," I tried to say, but we were already there. She stepped aside with a flourish, like a magician revealing a tiger. Ta-da. I stopped. I stopped breathing. I stopped thinking. I just stared. My kitchen was gone, the kitchen I had poured my heart into, the kitchen where I had handpicked the naughty pine cabinets because they reminded me of the trees outside, the kitchen with the deep, farmhouse copper sink that I had scoured antique shops for months to find, the kitchen with the warm, butcher block countertops that glowed like amber in the afternoon sun. It had been obliterated. In its place was a sterile, white laboratory. The warm pine cabinets were replaced by high gloss, flat-front white cabinetry that looked like it belonged in a Miami condo. Not a Montana cabin, the hardware was sharp, angular brushed nickel that looked like surgical instruments. The copper sink was gone, replaced by a generic square stainless steel basin, but the worst, the absolute worst, was the countertops. My beautiful butcher block was gone, stretching across every surface, including a massive new island that made the room feel cramped, was cold, gray-veined quartz. It was the kind of stone you see in the lobby of a mid-range corporate hotel. It was hard, it was echoing, it was completely devoid of character. The room felt temperature dropped by 10 degrees. The white surfaces reflected the harsh light from the recessed LED cans that had been cut into my beautiful wood ceiling. My cozy, rustic kitchen had been turned into an operating theater. "What is this?" I whispered. I could not find my voice. I felt like I was grieving. "Isn't it amazing?" Kendra beamed, walking into the room and running her hand lovingly over the cold quartz. "It opens the space up so much. That old wood was so depressing, so dark. This is modern. This is chic. It is what everyone is doing right now." I walked forward slowly, reaching out to touch the counter. It was freezing against my fingertips. "You tore out my cabinets," I said, my voice trembling. "You took out the sink." "I upgraded them," she corrected me. Opening a drawer, it slid out on soft close glides. "Look at this functionality." And I added a wine fridge over there. "And look at this backsplash subway tile is timeless." Gabby. I looked at the white subway tile. It looked like a public restroom. "Kendra," I said, turning to look at her. She was practically vibrating with pride. "How did you do this? How did you pay for this? I looked around the room. This was not a paint job. This was a gut renovation. The appliances were all new. A massive stainless steel refrigerator that was too big for the alcove jutted out awkwardly. A 6-burner range that looked like it belonged in a restaurant. "Oh, I got a great deal," she said, waving her hand. "I have a friend who knows a contractor. He gave us the family and friends discount." "How much?" I asked. The project manager in me took over. The part of my brain that calculated budgets and risk assessments. I scanned the room, pricing the materials. The quartz alone was thousands. The appliances were top of the line. The labor, the electrical work for the new lights. "How much?" "Kendra," I repeated, my voice hard. She bit her lip, looking down at the counter. "It was a steal, really, considering the equity value it adds to the house." "Give me a number," I commanded. 58,000, she mumbled. I felt the blood drain from my face. $58,000. "And change," she added quickly. "But look at it. It increases the resale value by at least 80. "I am not selling the house," I screamed. The sound tore out of my throat, startling both of us. "I am not selling, I live here. This is my home, not a flip." "Well, you do not have to yell," she said, recoiling, her face twisting into a pout. "I was trying to do something nice. I managed the whole project myself. Do you know how hard it is to deal with contractors?" $58,000, I repeated, the number echoing in my head. "Kendra, you said you were broke. You said your landlord evicted you. You could not pay rent. Where did you get nearly $60,000? She turned away from me, busying herself with a massive, chrome espresso machine that sat on the counter like a spaceship. "I have my ways," she said cryptically. "I have been doing some consulting work. Freelance." "Freelance what?" I asked. "You were a yoga instructor last year. Before that, you made beaded jewelry. What kind of freelance work pays $60,000 in 3 months?" She ignored me, pressing buttons on the machine. It whirred loudly, grinding beans. "Kendra, look at me," I said, stepping around the island to face her. "Did you borrow money? Did you take a loan from Mom? Because if Mom gave you her retirement money for this monstrosity—" "Mom did not give me anything," she snapped, her eyes flashing. "God, you are so condescending. Can't you just accept that maybe I am successful too? Maybe I can afford nice things." "You just told me you were evicted for not paying rent," I pointed out, my logic cutting through her bluster. "Which one is it? Are you the broke victim who needs a place to stay? Or are you the wealthy benefactor renovating my kitchen?" She slammed the portafilter into the machine. "I am nuanced. Okay, it is complicated." "It is not complicated," I said, staring at her. The suspicion in my gut was hardening into certainty. The open bank envelope, the missing mail, the expensive renovation. Money does not appear out of thin air. She turned the knob, and dark espresso began to drip into a cup. She refused to look at me. "I handled it," she said over the noise of the machine. "Stop interrogating me. You just got here. You are tired. You are cranky. Have some coffee and appreciate the fact that you have a brand new kitchen that you did not have to lift a finger for." "I did not want a new kitchen," I yelled. "I wanted my kitchen. My pine cabinets, where are they?" "I had the guys haul them to the dump," she said casually. "They were old, gabby, rotting. They were perfect," I whispered. "I sanded them myself," she sighed loudly, a sound of pure exasperation, as if I were a toddler throwing a tantrum over a broken toy. She picked up her espresso, took a sip, and leaned back against the cold. Gray counter. "You are so ungrateful," she said, shaking her head. "I create this beautiful space for you, and all you do is complain about money and old wood. This is why you are alone. You know, you hold on to garbage." I looked at her. I looked at the stranger standing in my kitchen, wearing my sister's face, drinking coffee from a machine I did not buy, surrounded by a renovation I did not authorize, paid for with money she should not have. And then I looked at the island again. There was a receipt sitting under a fruit bowl. A yellow carbon copy paper. I reached out and slid it out before she could stop me. It was an invoice for the quartz countertops. At the bottom, in the payment section, it did not say cash or check. It said credit card, ending in 4189. My vision blurred. 4189. That was not Kendra's card. That was my card. My primary travel rewards Visa. The one with the $50,000 limit that I kept for emergencies and business expenses. The one that was supposed to be locked in the safe in my home office. I looked up at Kendra. She was watching me, the cup frozen halfway to her mouth. She did not look scared. She looked annoyed that she had been caught so quickly. 4189, I said, my voice deadly calm. She rolled her eyes, setting the cup down on the quartz with a sharp clink. Oh, come on, she said. I knew you would freak out about the details. The details, I repeated. You stole my credit card. I borrowed it, she shouted, throwing her hands up. For the points I was going to pay you back when my settlement came in. I did it for the points. Gabby, you love travel points. I stood there in the cold, white, expensive wreckage of my sanctuary, holding the yellow slip of paper that proved my sister was not just a squatter, she was a criminal. I used your card, Kendra said. She said it with the casual nonchalance of someone admitting they had borrowed a splash of milk for their coffee. She did not flinch. She did not lower her eyes. She stood there, leaning against the gray quartz countertop that she had bought with my money, and took another sip of her espresso. The air in the kitchen seemed to vanish. My lungs were pumping, but nothing was satisfying the sudden, desperate need for oxygen. You used my card, I repeated, my voice flat, stripped of all inflection, because if I let even a sliver of emotion through, I was going to scream until the windows shattered. My Visa, the one in the safe. It was just sitting there, she shrugged, setting the cup down. Collecting dust? Honestly, Gabby, you have this massive credit line and you never use it. It is actually bad for your credit score to have zero utilization. I was helping you. Helping me? I echoed. I felt like I was speaking a different language. You broke into my safe. I did not break in, she corrected me instantly, her tone annoyed, as if I were getting the details of a minor anecdote wrong. The key was in your desk drawer, under the stapler. That is hardly Fort Knox. I was looking for a pen, found the key, and just checked to make sure your important papers were safe. You know, in case of a fire or something. I am responsible like that. You went through my desk. You found the key. You opened the safe. You took my credit card. I listed the steps, trying to force the reality of the violation into the space between us. That is theft, Kendra. That is identity theft. Oh, stop using legal words, she scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. We are sisters. I needed to pay the contractor, and they did not take checks. I put it on the card for convenience. I told you, I will pay it back when things pick up. When things pick up. I stepped closer to her, invading her personal space. You just told me you were evicted. You have no job. You have no money. How exactly are you going to pay back $60,000 with yoga classes? Kendra's face hardened. The bubbly hostess persona evaporated, replaced by the petulant, defensive look I had known since childhood. You make so much money. Gabrielle, you are always flying around Europe, staying in hotels, buying whatever you want. Do you know how hard it is for me? Do you have any idea what it is like to scrape by while your sister is living like royalty? I work, I said, my voice rising. I work 80-hour weeks. I built this career. I built this house. And I am improving it, she shouted back. I am adding value. You should be thanking me. This kitchen was a dump, a dark, depressing cave. I made it worth something. If you sold this place tomorrow, you would make $100,000 profit just because of what I did. I am not selling. I slammed my hand down on the island. The sound was sharp and violent against the stone. Stop talking about value. You spent my money without asking. I turned away from her, my eyes scanning the rest of the open-plan space. Now that the veil of shock was lifting, I was seeing more. It wasn't just the kitchen. My eyes landed on the dining area. The vintage wrought iron chandelier I had restored was gone. In its place hung a cluster of geometric glass orbs that looked like they belonged in a tech startup lobby. I looked at the hallway, a new runner rug, silk and impractical for a mountain home. I walked rapidly toward the back door, the glass sliders that led to the deck. Through the glass, I saw a large cardboard box sitting on the porch, still sealed. I unlocked the door and slid it open. The cold mountain air hit me, a sharp contrast to the heated argument inside. I looked at the label on the box. Luxe Spa Outdoor Hot Tub Heater. A hot tub. I turned back to her, standing in the doorway. You bought a hot tub? Kendra followed me, crossing her arms defensively. The old one was broken. It didn't get hot enough. The old one was fine. It just needed a new filter. Well, I wanted jets, she said, lifting her chin. Therapeutic jets. For my back. Stress carries in the lower lumbar. Gabrielle, not that you would understand self-care. Did you put this on the card too? I asked, pointing at the box. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence was a neon sign. What else? I demanded, walking back inside and closing the door. What else did you buy? Furniture, clothes. Did you pay off your car? I paid some bills, she cried out, her voice cracking. I was drowning. Okay, I had collectors calling me day and night. I just needed some breathing room. I thought since you were family, you would want to help, but I guess I was wrong. You are just like everyone says. Cold, selfish. Who says that? I asked, stunned. Everyone. She threw her hands up. Mom, Aunt Linda, they all say it. Gabrielle is so successful, but she is so hard. Gabrielle has all that money, but she never shares. I am just balancing the scales. Gabby, I am just taking the portion of luck that you hogged for yourself. The words hit me like physical blows. Is that what they thought? That I was lucky. They didn't see the years of grad school, the missed holidays, the sheer exhaustion. They just saw the paycheck and assumed it was a lottery win. I refused to split. This isn't about luck, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and hurt. This is about theft. You felt entitled to my life, so you just took it. I am your sister, she screamed, tears finally spilling over. I am not a stranger. Why are you treating me like a criminal over some stupid money? You can make more, I can't. I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw the manipulation, the refusal to take responsibility, the deeply ingrained belief that the world owed her a living and I was the designated payer. Get out, I said. Kendra stopped crying instantly. She blinked, the tears drying on her cheeks as her expression shifted to genuine confusion. What? Get out of my house, I said, pointing to the front door. Pack your bags, take your clothes, leave the espresso machine, leave the keys, and get out, right now. She stared at me, and then, slowly, a smirk curled the corner of her mouth. It was a look I hadn't seen before. It wasn't childish petulance. It was adult malice. No, she said. Excuse me. I said no. She crossed her arms and leaned back against the counter, her posture relaxing. I am not leaving. This is my house, I said, stepping forward. I have the deed. I pay the mortgage. You are a guest who has overstayed her welcome. Leave, or I will throw your things onto the driveway myself. Actually, she said, her voice dropping to a smug, confident register. I am not a guest. I have been here for 3 months. Gabrielle, I receive mail here. My license is updated to this address. I have established residency. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Tenant rights, she said, tilting her head. In Montana, if someone lives in a property for a certain amount of time with the owner's knowledge or without their explicit objection, they become a tenant. You can't just kick me out. You have to serve me with an eviction notice, 30 days minimum, maybe 60, since I can claim hardship. I stared at her. This wasn't something she had come up with on the fly. She knew the laws. She had researching this. I never gave you permission to live here, I said. You broke in. Prove it, she challenged. I have the keys. I have my stuff here. I have utility bills in my name, oh yeah. I switched the electric bill to me last month to build credit. So, on paper, I live here. This is my home. The realization washed over me. The surprise kitchen renovation wasn't just about spending my money. It was about entrenchment. She had made herself part of the house. She had sunk her claws so deep into the infrastructure of my life that ripping her out would require legal surgery. You calculated this, I whispered. You planned this. You knew I would be gone, and you set this up so I couldn't remove you. I protected myself, she said. I knew you would be like this. I knew you would try to throw me out the second you got back. So I made sure you couldn't. You are not a tenant, I said, my voice shaking with fury. You are an intruder. You are a con artist. I am your sister, she spat back, and I am not going anywhere, so you can either learn to live with your new kitchen and your roommate, or you can leave, but I am staying. I looked at her, standing there in my ruined kitchen, wearing her expensive loungewear, secure in the knowledge that she had outsmarted me. She thought she had won. She thought the bond of blood and the technicalities of the law would force me to submit, to roll over and pay the bills like I always did. You want to play legal games? I asked, reaching into my pocket for my phone. Go ahead, she laughed. Call Mom. She will tell you to calm down. She will tell you to let me stay. I am not calling Mom, I said, unlocking the screen. Kendra's smile faltered slightly. Who are you calling? The police, I said. Her face went white. You wouldn't? Watch me. I am your sister, she shrieked. You are going to call the cops on your own sister for what? For fixing your house. For credit card fraud, I said, tapping the numbers. For identity theft. For breaking and entering. Those aren't civil disputes. Kendra, those are felonies. They won't arrest me, she said, but her voice wavered. It is a domestic issue. They will just tell you to file a civil suit. Maybe, I said, my thumb hovering over the call button. Or maybe they will look at the $60,000 charged to a card I didn't authorize. Maybe they will look at the safe you broke into. Maybe they will look at the footage. I didn't know if the footage existed yet. I hadn't checked the cloud server for my security cameras. But the bluff hit its mark. Her eyes darted to the ceiling corners, searching for lenses. Put the phone down, she hissed. Pack your bags, I countered. You have 1 hour. If you are still here, I press send, and I press charges. You are a monster, she whispered, her face twisting into ugliness. Mom was right about you. You care more about money than people. I care about trust, I said. And you just burned it all down. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, heading for my office. I needed to see just how bad the damage was, and I needed to know if I was right about the cameras, because if she was this confident about tenant laws, she had advice, and I needed to know who was giving it to her. I slammed the door to my home office and engaged the deadbolt. It was a flimsy lock, meant for privacy rather than security, but it gave me a psychological barrier against the woman currently occupying my kitchen. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so cold and precise it felt like hypothermia. I needed facts. Kendra had thrown the word tenant at me like a grenade, and I needed to know exactly how much ammunition she had stockpiled. My office was the one room in the cabin I had kept strictly utilitarian. A large oak desk, a wall of filing cabinets, and a bookshelf filled with reference materials. At first glance, it looked undisturbed, but as I walked around the desk, the illusion shattered. A stack of papers on the corner of the desk was slightly askew. I was a person of right angles. I aligned my documents with the edge of the blotter. These were fanned out. I sat down and pulled the stack toward me. It was not my handwriting on the notepad. It was Kendra's loops and swirls. I read the top page. It was a budget, but it was not a budget for groceries or rent. It was a renovation schedule. Kitchen 58,000, flooring 12,000, lighting 4,000, landscaping 8,000 pending. I felt bile rise in my throat. She had not just redone the kitchen, she was planning to overhaul the entire property. Beside the notepad was a pile of receipts she had evidently been organizing. I flipped through them. High-end light fixtures, a deposit for a custom closet system, a receipt for a smart home security integration system. My eyes darted to the wastebasket under the desk. It was full. I reached down and pulled out the bin, dumping the contents onto the rug. Buried amidst granola bar wrappers and crumpled sketches of floor plans, I found it. It was a United States Postal Service confirmation letter. It had been torn into 4 pieces, but the text was unmistakable. Official change of address confirmation. Old address, 742 Maple Street. Seattle. New address, 109 Pine Ridge Lane, Pine Water Ridge, Montana. Effective date, October 4th. October 4th. That was 2 days after I had flown out of JFK Airport for Zurich. She had not come here because she was evicted in January. She had moved her entire legal existence to my house 48 hours after I left the country. This was not a desperate crash landing. It was a planned invasion. I turned to my computer. I woke the screen, my fingers flying across the keyboard to log into my banking portal. I had to authenticate the login through my phone, and as I waited for the code, I could hear movement in the hallway. The floorboards creaked. "Gabrielle," Kendra's voice came through the door, muffled but high-pitched. "I am going to pack a bag, but we need to talk about the schedule for the rest of the week." I ignored her. The code arrived. I punched it in. The dashboard of my primary bank account loaded. I clicked on the credit card section, specifically the Visa ending in 4189. The balance hit me like a physical slap. Current balance $72,415.33. My knees gave out, and I sank into the office chair. $72,000. I scrolled down the transaction history. It was a horror show of consumption. The $60,000 for the kitchen was there, broken into 3 large payments to a company called Elite Stone and Surface, but that was just the headline act. There were dozens of charges to Amazon, Wayfair, and Overstock. There were charges to local grocery stores for $300 at a time. There were gas station charges. There were charges for streaming services, subscription boxes for wine, and a monthly charge for a high-end gym in the town of Pine Water Ridge. She had been living off me, completely. Every bite of food she ate, every drop of gas in her car, every minute of entertainment she consumed had been billed to my name. I clicked on the Statements tab. She had set the account to paperless billing 3 months ago. The email address on file had been changed from my personal Gmail to a variation I did not recognize, gabrielle.roberts.finance@gmail.com. She had created a fake email address to intercept the alerts. This required a level of malice that made my stomach turn. This was not just using the card in the safe. This was changing the account settings so the owner would not be notified. I spun the chair around and faced the filing cabinet. The bottom drawer, that was where I kept the life file. It was a fireproof box containing the documents that proved I existed. I yanked the drawer open. The box was unlocked. I lifted the lid. Empty. My breath hitched. My passport copy, my birth certificate, my social security card, my property deed copy. The last 3 years of my tax returns, all of it was gone. Panic, cold and sharp, began to set in. Identity theft was one thing, but possessing my birth certificate and deed, that gave her power, that gave her the ability to open new lines of credit, to apply for loans, perhaps even to challenge the title of the house if she was creative enough. I stood up, needing to confront her, but a sound stopped me. Outside the window, on the side porch that wrapped around the office, I heard the sliding glass door open. I crept toward the window, pressing myself against the wall so I could not be seen. "She is here," Kendra's voice whispered. It was urgent, devoid of the bratty entitlement she had shown in the kitchen. She sounded professional, calculated. Yes, she came back early. No, she is freaking out. She knows about the card. A pause. "I am handling it," she hissed. "I told her I have tenant rights. She is scared to call the cops. But you need to hurry the paperwork. If she files a fraud report before we get the lien recorded, it complicates things." The lien. The word hung in the air like toxic smoke. A lien. She was not just spending my money, she was trying to encumber the property. "I know," she said. "I got the signature. It is valid. Just get it to the clerk's office tomorrow morning. I will stall her." She hung up. I heard the slider close. I backed away from the window, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Stall her. She was playing me. She was not packing. She was buying time to finalize something legal that would bind my property to her debt or her scheme. I looked at the computer again. I needed proof, real proof. Not just a shredded letter or an empty drawer. I needed to know exactly what she had done and who she was talking to. And then I remembered. Before I left for Europe, I had installed a mesh security system. It was not the standard alarm company my mother used. It was a cloud-based system with hidden cameras in the main living areas and the exterior. I had installed it because the cabin was remote, and I worried about bears or wildfires. I had disguised the cameras as smoke detectors and motion sensors. I had completely forgotten about them in the chaos of my arrival. I opened a new tab and typed in the URL for the security cloud. My fingers trembled as I typed my password. System status online. Storage 98% full. It had been recording. For 3 months. I navigated to the timeline. I scrolled back to October. October 2nd. I saw myself locking the door, dragging my suitcases to the car. I looked exhausted. I locked the gate. I fast-forwarded. October 4th, 2:14 in the afternoon. A white SUV pulled up to the gate. Kendra got out. She did not climb the gate. She did not cut the lock. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a key, and opened the padlock. I paused the video. I zoomed in. It was a shiny brass key. It looked brand new. Mom. It had to be Mom. She was the only other person who had access to the spare set I kept in her safe deposit box. Betrayal number 2. I watched Kendra drive up. She unlocked the front door with another key. She walked in, spun around in the living room, and pumped her fist in the air like she had just won a championship. I switched the camera view to the office/den. October 5th. 9 in the morning. Kendra walked into the office. She was holding a cup of coffee. She sat at my desk. She opened the drawer, found the key to the safe under the stapler, just as she had admitted, and opened the safe. But she did not just take the card. She took out the entire stack of credit cards. I had 3 backup cards I rarely used. I watched, mesmerized with horror, as she laid them out on the desk. She took her phone out. She photographed the front of each card. Then she flipped them over. She zoomed in on the CVV codes. She photographed the backs. She was not borrowing a card for a contractor. She was archiving my financial data. Then she opened the laptop, my spare laptop that I kept in the drawer. She booted it up. She pulled a piece of paper from her pocket, my password list. I had written it down for my executor in case of my death, sealed in an envelope in the safe. She tore the envelope open. She logged in. I watched her spend 3 hours on that computer. At one point, she made a phone call. "Yeah, I am in," she said on the video. The audio was crisp. "I have the social. I have the mother's maiden name. I am changing the security questions now. The answer to, 'What is your favorite pet?' is now money." She laughed. I felt sick, physically sick. I scrubbed the timeline forward, looking for the conversation I had just overheard. I wanted to see who she was working with. I found a clip from 3 weeks ago. January 7th. Kendra was in the living room, but she was not alone. Standing near the fireplace was a man. He was not a contractor. He was in his 60s, wearing a slightly ill-fitting gray suit and a blue tie. He had a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. He looked like a small-town lawyer or an insurance adjuster, someone who made a living off paperwork. I turned the volume up. "It is a quit-claim deed," the man said. His voice was gravelly. "But we are structuring it as a transfer into a trust where you are the trustee. It is safer that way. If she comes back and tries to sell, she will find the title is clouded." And the signature? Kendra asked. She was holding a pen, hovering over a document on the coffee table. Just trace it like we practiced, the man said. Use the light box. Once it is notarized, it is hard to challenge. I have a notary who owes me a favor. And this makes it mine? Kendra asked, her voice trembling with excitement. It gives you leverage, the man corrected. It gives you 50% equity. She cannot kick you out of a house you own half of. Kendra bent down. I watched her hand move across the paper. I watched my sister forge my signature on a deed transfer for the house I had built with my own money. She stood up and handed the paper to the man. He slipped it into his portfolio. Good girl, he said. Now, about my fee, the account transfer. I already sent it, Kendra said. 5,000, from the Visa. I paused the video. My hand was frozen on the mouse. This was not just family drama. This was a conspiracy. She had hired a professional to help her steal my home, and she had paid him with my own money. I looked at the timestamp. January 7th. That was weeks ago, but she had said on the phone just now, "Get it to the clerk's office tomorrow. Why the delay?" Then I saw it, on the video. The man stopped at the door. "We need the original deed," he said. "To file the amendment. Do you have it?" "It is in the safe," Kendra said. "I saw it." "Get it," he said. "I cannot file without the legal description from the original." "I will get it to you," she promised. That was why she had raided the file. She needed the physical deed to finalize the theft. I looked at the empty drawer again. The deed was gone, which meant she had it, or she had already given it to him. But if she had already given it to him, why did she tell him to hurry just now? If she files a fraud report before we get the lien recorded, they had not filed it yet. They were waiting for something, or maybe the notary who owed a favor had backed out. Whatever the reason, the clock was ticking. The document with my forged signature and the original deed were likely in that gray suit's briefcase, or perhaps still here, waiting for the final handoff. I grabbed my phone. I recorded the screen playing the video of the forgery. I recorded the clip of her photographing the cards. I backed up the files to 3 different cloud servers. I stood up. I wiped the tears of shock from my face. They were gone now, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I was not just a sister anymore. I was a witness, and I was the victim of a felony in progress. I walked to the door of the office. I could hear Kendra in the living room again, humming that same tune she had hummed when I arrived. She thought she was smart. She thought she had won. She had no idea that I had just watched her sign her own prison sentence. I opened the door and stepped out. It was time to stop playing defense. I walked out of my office, grabbed my purse and car keys from the entry table, and moved toward the door with a singular, driving purpose. Kendra was still in the living room, scrolling on her phone, looking entirely too comfortable on the sofa she had bought with my stolen money. "Where are you going?" she asked, not looking up. "To get groceries." I lied. My voice was steady, terrifyingly so. It was the voice of a project manager who had just realized the entire timeline was compromised and was initiating disaster recovery protocols. "Bring back wine," she called out as the door clicked shut behind me. I did not answer. I marched to my rental car, the gravel crunching under my boots, and got in. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I did not drive to the grocery store. I drove straight down the mountain, taking the winding turns faster than I should have, fueled by a mixture of adrenaline and cold. Hard clarity. I was headed to the law offices of Renee Hardwick. Pinewater Ridge was a small town, but it had money flowing through it from the ski resorts and the ranch lands, which meant it had serious lawyers. Renee Hardwick was the shark of the county. She was known for handling high-asset divorces and complex property disputes. I had used her briefly when I bought the land to check the easements, and I remembered her as a woman who did not believe in small talk. I sat in her waiting room for 10 minutes, my leg bouncing nervously. When her assistant finally buzzed me back, Renee was standing behind her mahogany desk, looking immaculate in a charcoal suit. She did not offer me coffee or ask how I was doing. She simply pointed to the chair opposite her. "Tell me," she said. I opened my laptop and laid it out. I did not start with the feelings or the betrayal. I started with the data. I showed her the spreadsheet of unauthorized transactions. I showed her the photos of the kitchen renovation I had not approved. I showed her the torn change of address confirmation I had fished out of the trash. And finally, I played the video clip from my phone, the one I had just recorded off my security feed of Kendra tracing my signature onto a deed transfer document. Renee watched the video in silence. Her face was a mask of professional detachment. When the clip ended, she leaned back in her chair and took off her reading glasses. "This is not a family dispute, Gabrielle," she said, her voice sharp and metallic. "This is a felony. Several felonies. Actually," I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I know. Do you?" she challenged, leaning forward. "Most people think they know. They think they can handle this with a stern conversation and a repayment plan. But let me be clear about what I'm seeing here. This is identity theft. This is credit card fraud involving sums well over the threshold for grand larceny. This is forgery of a legal instrument, and if she actually filed that quitclaim deed, it is title fraud." She picked up a legal pad and a pen. "We need to stop thinking about her as your sister," Renee said, writing rapidly. "In the eyes of the law, right now, she is a hostile actor who is actively liquidating your assets. If we treat this as a family misunderstanding, you will lose your house. The law does not protect people who sleep on their rights because they are afraid of hurting feelings. I need you to evict her." I said. Renee shook her head. "Eviction is a civil process. It implies she has a right to be there as a tenant. If we file for eviction, we are acknowledging she has tenancy. We are not doing that. We are filing for an order of protection and an immediate removal order based on criminal trespassing and fraud. But to do that, you need a police report, a real one." She handed me a list of instructions she had just written. "Step 1, she said, tapping the paper. "You are going to the bank. You are going to close every compromised account. You are going to sign affidavits of fraud. Step 2, you are going to the sheriff's department. You will speak to Detective Owen Calder. He handles white-collar crime in the county. You will give him everything you gave me." She looked me dead in the eye. "And Gabrielle, do not let them talk you out of it. The police hate these cases. They call them civil matters to avoid the paperwork. You have to force them to see the crime." I took the paper. My hands were no longer shaking. I left Renee's office and drove 2 blocks to the local branch of my bank. The interior was quiet, smelling of floor wax and old money. I sat across from a branch manager named Sarah, a woman with kind eyes who looked about my mother's age. "I need to freeze everything," I said, "and I need to report $72,000 in fraudulent charges." Sarah typed into her computer, her eyebrows knitting together as the screen populated. "Oh my," she whispered, "these charges go back months, and they are local. My sister." I said. It was the first time I had said it out loud to a stranger. "My sister stole my identity." Sarah stopped typing. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and warning that chilled me to the bone. "Miss Roberts," she said softly, "I have to tell you something. We see this more often than you would think, and I need you to be prepared. When you sign these fraud affidavits, you are initiating a criminal investigation against her. The bank will pursue her to recover the funds. We do not just write this off. We press charges." "I know." I said. "Many people back down," she continued. "They get to this point, and they realize they are sending a sibling or a child to prison, and they withdraw the claim. If you do that, you become liable for the debt. You cannot have it both ways. Either she stole it, and she faces the consequences, or you authorized it, and you pay the bill." I thought of the white kitchen. I thought of the smirk on Kendra's face when she told me she had tenant rights. I thought of the man in the gray suit and the forged signature. "She stole it," I said firmly. "Print the papers." I spent the next hour signing my name over and over, with every signature. I felt a heavy chain being wrapped around Kendra's future. It was a terrible feeling, a heavy, nauseating weight in my gut. But it was necessary. I placed a fraud alert on my Social Security number. I froze my credit reports at all 3 bureaus. By the time I walked out of the bank, I had cut off her financial oxygen supply. My final stop was the Pinewater Ridge Sheriff's Station. It was a utilitarian brick building that looked like it had not been renovated since 1980. I asked for Detective Calder. Owen Calder was a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. He was sitting at a messy desk, surrounded by stacks of files. Drinking coffee from a styrofoam cup, he did not look up when I approached. "Detective Calder," I asked. "Renee Hardwick sent me." That got his attention. He looked up, his eyes sharp and cynical. "Renee sent you. You must be in deep trouble. Sit down." I sat. I went through the story for the 3rd time that day. I laid out the timeline. I handed him a USB drive containing the video files I had backed up from the cloud. He listened without interrupting. He took notes in a small, battered notebook. When I got to the part about the forgery and the man in the suit, he stopped writing and looked at me. "Describe the man." He said, "60s, gray suit, leather portfolio, gravelly voice." Calder nodded slowly. "Sounds like Miller. He is a disbarred notary who floats around the county helping people fake property documents. We have been trying to nail him for 2 years." He leaned back in his chair, the springs groaning. "Ms. Roberts, you have enough here for an arrest warrant," he said. "But I am going to be honest with you. This is going to get ugly. The minute I bring her in, your phone is going to blow up. Your parents, your cousins, your neighbors, they are all going to tell you that you are ruining her life. They will say you are rich and she is poor and you should just absorb the loss. They already have." I said, "It will get worse," he warned. "They will try to make you drop the charges. And if you do, if you waver even an inch, the district attorney will drop this case so fast your head will spin. We do not like wasting resources on family squabbles that get resolved at Thanksgiving dinner." "I am not wavering," I said. "She tried to steal my house. Detective, this isn't a squabble. It is a heist." Calder studied me for a long moment, assessing my resolve. He seemed to find what he was looking for. "Okay," he said. "I will get a warrant for the identity theft and the forgery. We will pick her up. But before I do that, I have a piece of advice." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Pull your credit reports," he said. "I just froze them." I replied. "No," he said. "Pull the history. Go back 10 years. Go back to when she turned 18. Why, I asked, confusion knitting my brow. "Because people like this do not start with a $60,000 kitchen renovation." He said, "They start small. A gas bill here, a small loan there. If she was comfortable enough to break into your safe and forge your name on a deed, this is not her first rodeo. She has likely been using your name for a long time." The blood drained from my face. I had always had perfect credit. I never checked the details because the score was always high. But I had a high income. I had a high debt tolerance. Small things could have been hidden in the noise of my financial life for years. "Go home," Calder said. "Lock your bedroom door. Do not engage with her. Let us do our job. We will come for her. Probably tomorrow morning once the judge signs the warrant. Until then, you are an observer. Do not tip her off." I walked out of the station into the late afternoon sun. The light was golden, hitting the peaks of the mountains in that way that usually made my heart soar. But today, I felt nothing but a cold, grim determination. The drive back up the mountain was different. When I had driven down, I was a victim. I was a sister who had been betrayed. I was reacting to the shock. Now, as I steered the car up the switchbacks, I felt a shift. I was no longer Gabrielle the sister. I was Gabrielle the plaintiff. I was the key witness in the case of the state of Montana versus Kendra Roberts. I was not going home to a family reunion. I was returning to a crime scene to secure the perimeter. I pulled up to the gate. It was still open, just as I had left it. The white SUV was still there, gleaming in the driveway. I parked my rental car next to it. I walked up the steps, carrying a bottle of wine I had bought at a gas station to maintain my cover. I paused at the door, taking a deep breath. Detective Calder's words echoed in my mind. Go back 10 years. I opened the door. Kendra was still on the couch. She looked up and smiled, unaware that her world was about to end. "Got the wine?" she asked. I held up the bottle. "Perfect," she said. "I was thinking we could order pizza. My treat." I almost laughed. "Her treat? Paid for with my card." "No doubt." "That sounds great," I said, my voice flat. "I am just going to change and check a few emails." I walked past her, past the fake photo on the mantel, past the kitchen that was a monument to her greed, and went into my office. I locked the door. I sat down at my desk. I opened my laptop. I did not check my email. I navigated to the credit bureau's website. I requested my full 10-year credit history report. The file downloaded. It was a PDF, 40 pages long. I took a sip of water, my hand trembling slightly. Then, I clicked open. The silence in the cabin the next morning was heavy, but it was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that hangs in the air after a violent storm has stripped the leaves from the trees. I had spent the night locked in my office, sitting on the floor with my back against the door, reading 10 years of my financial history. I had fallen asleep there, an uneasy, fitful nap, and woken up with a stiff neck and a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. When I finally unlocked the door and stepped out into the hallway, the air felt different, still, too still. "Kendra," I called out. My voice was raspy. There was no answer. I walked into the living room. The first thing I noticed was the light. It was brighter than it should have been. The morning sun was streaming in through the sliding glass doors, but the room looked naked. The large, creamy knit throw blanket on the sofa was gone. The decorative pillows, the ones she had bought with my money, were gone. The expensive, geometric rug she had placed in the hallway was gone. I ran to the window. The driveway was empty. The white SUV was gone. She had run. Panic and relief warred in my chest. She was gone. I was safe. But then I turned toward the kitchen, and the relief evaporated, replaced by a cold, hollow shock. It looked like a carcass. Kendra had not just packed a bag. She had looted the place. The countertop was bare. The $4,000 espresso machine was gone. The high-end stand mixer was gone. The toaster, the blender, the set of copper pots she had displayed on the rack, all gone. She had even taken the light bulbs out of the new pendant lights she had installed, leaving the sockets gaping like empty eye sockets. I walked through the house, my boots echoing on the floorboards. In the guest bedroom she had occupied, the bed was stripped to the mattress. She had taken the sheets, the duvet, the pillows. The closet was empty, save for a few wire hangers swinging ghost-like on the rod. It was a strategic extraction. She had taken everything that was portable and valuable. She had liquidated my home before I could liquidate her presence. I walked into the bathroom. The air smelled of cheap vanilla and something sharp acetone. Maybe I looked at the mirror. Slashed across the glass in bright, blood-red lipstick was a message. The letters were jagged, written in a fury. "You are always selfish." I stared at the words. Selfish. I had paid for the roof over her head. I had paid for the car she drove away in. I had paid, unknowingly, for the lipstick she used to write the insult. And yet, in her narrative, I was the villain because I had finally closed the wallet. My phone, which I had left on the kitchen island, or rather, the gray quartz slab that used to be an island, began to buzz. It vibrated against the cold stone. A harsh, drilling sound. I looked at the screen. Mom. I did not answer. It buzzed again, and again. Then the text messages started coming in. Rapid fire, pinging one after another like bullets. Mom, Kendra just called me sobbing. "How could you throw her out, Mom? She has nowhere to go." "Gabrielle, she is sleeping in her car." "Mom, I raised you better than this. You are being cruel. Mom, pick up the phone. Fix this." I felt the familiar squeeze in my chest, the conditioning of 3 decades telling me to apologize, to fix it, to smooth things over, be the good daughter, be the responsible one. But then I looked at the red lipstick on the mirror. I looked at the empty spot where my mixer used to be. I thought about the forged deed in the man's briefcase. I did not pick up. Instead, I opened the voice recorder app on my phone as the landline on the wall began to ring. I let it go to voicemail. Click. Gabrielle, my mother's voice filled the empty kitchen, shrill and trembling. I do not know who you think you are, treating your sister like a criminal. She told me everything. She said she fixed up your house as a surprise. And you screamed at her. You are acting like a monster. She is family. You have so much, and you cannot spare a room for your own flesh and blood. Call me back immediately and tell me you are letting her come back. If you do not bother coming to Christmas this year. I saved the voicemail. I labeled it Elaine Roberts. Harassment. January 29th. Then, a new number popped up on my mobile screen. No caller ID. I knew who it was. I let it ring. Then the text started. Unknown number. You think you won. You didn't win anything. Unknown number. I am going to tell everyone what you are really like. I will post on Facebook that you are unstable. Unknown number, please. Gabby. I am scared. I have no money for gas. Please just send me $500 and I will disappear. I promise. Unknown number. If you call the cops, I will tell your boss you have a drug problem. I know people. The oscillation between victimhood and viciousness was dizzying. 1 second she was a scared little girl. The next she was an extortionist. I screenshotted every text. I did not reply. Renee Hardwick's instructions were clear: do not engage. Document everything. I was standing in the middle of the living room, feeling like the walls were closing in, when the phone rang again. This time, the caller ID said June Miller, Aunt June, my grandmother's best friend. She was 78 years old, smoked unfiltered cigarettes, and had a voice like gravel in a blender. She was technically my second cousin, but she had been the only adult in my life who never looked at me with expectation. I hesitated. June was family. She might be calling to join the chorus of condemnation. I answered. Hello, June. Gabrielle, she barked. Is the leech gone? I blinked, taken aback. What? Kendra? She said. Did you kick her out yet? She left this morning. I stammered. Before I could kick her out, she took everything. June, she stripped the house. Good, June said. Material things can be replaced. Your sanity cannot. I was wondering when you would finally grow a spine. I sank onto the floor. The phone pressed to my ear. Tears, hot and unbidden, pricked my eyes. Mom says I'm cruel. She says I am abandoning family. Elaine is a fool, June said, her voice hard. She always has been. She created that monster. She fed it, watered it, and now she is mad that it bites. I feel terrible, I whispered. She is sleeping in her car. She is not sleeping in her car, June scoffed. She is sleeping at that boyfriend's house, the one with the wandering eye. Don't believe a word of it. Listen to me. Gabrielle, your grandmother saw this coming 20 years ago. What do you mean? Why do you think she left the cabin to you? June asked. And only you. It wasn't just because you were the favorite. It was a legal firewall. She told me. If I leave this to Elaine, Kendra will spend it. If I leave it to both girls, Kendra will force Gabrielle to sell it. She knew Kendra was a consumer. Some people are creators, honey. Some are consumers. Kendra eats people. She eats their money, their patience, their love, and she never gets full. She forged my signature. June, I said, my voice breaking. She tried to steal the deed. There was a long silence on the other end. Then June sighed, a sound of deep, weary sadness. I know, June said softly. Or, I suspected. Grandma left a condition in her will. You know, a clause she had the lawyer seal unless things got bad. She made me the executor of that specific clause. What clause? If Kendra ever attempted to defraud the estate, or the primary beneficiary that is you, she is to be cut off from the family trust entirely. Not just the house, the rainy day fund your grandfather set up, all of it. I didn't know there was a trust, I said. There isn't much in it, June admitted. About $40,000. But it was Kendra's safety net, and by doing this, she just cut her own cord. You are not the one destroying her. Gabrielle, she did this to herself the moment she picked up that pen. Thank you. June, I sobbed. I thought I was crazy. You are not crazy, she said firmly. You are just finally standing up for yourself. And that always feels like aggression to people who are used to walking all over you. We hung up. And for the first time that morning, I felt a flicker of strength. An hour later, I heard a car outside. I tensed, grabbing the baseball bat I had found in the garage, but it was not a white SUV. It was a rental sedan, and stepping out of it was a woman with sharp glasses, a sharp bob, and a clipboard. Marisol, my best friend, my college roommate, my sanity. I had texted her the night before, a disjointed mess of a message saying emergency, Kendra, fraud, help. Marisol did not text back. Are you okay? She texted back a flight number. She walked into the open door, took one look at the lipstick on the mirror, the holes in the kitchen counter, and the shell-shocked expression on my face. She dropped her bag, walked over, and hugged me. It was a fierce, tight hug that held me together when I felt like falling apart. Then, she pulled back and looked at me. Okay, she said. Cry time is over. We have work to do. She opened her bag and pulled out a label maker, a stack of file folders, and a laptop. I need access to your bank statements, your police report number, and the contact info for your lawyer, she said, moving toward the dining table, which was thankfully too heavy for Kendra to steal. We are going to treat this like a failed product launch. We are going to document the losses, mitigate the damage, and prepare the litigation strategy. Marisol was a force of nature. For the next 8 hours, she did not let me spiral. When I started to cry about the missing espresso machine, she handed me a spreadsheet. List it, she ordered. Make, model, estimated value, date of purchase if you have it. We are building the restitution file. We went room by room. We photographed the damage. We photographed the empty spaces. We photographed the lipstick on the mirror before cleaning it off. This is psychological warfare, Marisol said as she scrubbed the glass. She wants you to see this every time you brush your teeth. She wants to haunt you. It is working, I admitted. Only if you let it, she said. Right now, she is just a defendant. Reduce her to that. She is not your sister. She is case number 4920. By nightfall. The house felt different. It was still scarred, but it was organized. We had a stack of files 3 inches thick. We had a timeline that contradicted every lie Kendra had told my mother. We sat on the deck, wrapped in blankets because Kendra had stolen the outdoor heater, drinking wine from coffee mugs because she had stolen the wine glasses. I feel guilty, I confessed, looking out at the dark silhouette of the mountains. Mom sent me another text. She said she's going to the hospital because the stress is giving her chest pains. Marisol took a sip of wine. Gabrielle, listen to me. That is not a heart attack. That is a tactic. Your mother is losing control of the narrative. For years, the family piece relied on you being the buffer. You absorbed Kendra's chaos so your mother didn't have to. Now that you moved out of the way, the chaos is hitting Elaine, and she hates it. She doesn't want to save Kendra. She wants you to go back to being the sponge. I stared at her. It was so simple, yet so brutal. So the harmony, I started. There was never any harmony, Marisol said. There was just your silence, and now that you are making noise, they are calling it war. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. I am watching you. The text read, I showed it to Marisol. Add it to the file, she said, her voice cool and steady. And tomorrow, we go back to the police. This isn't just fraud anymore. This is stalking. I looked at the message. I looked at the dark woods surrounding us. For the first time, I realized that the danger wasn't just financial. Kendra was desperate, and a desperate person who believes they are the victim is capable of anything. We need to change the locks again, I said. Already called the guy, Marisol said. He will be here at 8 a.m. I leaned back, looking up at the stars. I had lost my kitchen. I had lost my savings. I had lost my family. But sitting there in the cold, I realized I had found something I hadn't had in years. I had found the truth, and it was ugly, but it was mine. The PDF file on my laptop screen was 40 pages long, and every scroll of the mouse wheel felt like I was peeling back a layer of my own skin. Marisol sat next to me at the dining table. Her laptop opened to a spreadsheet where she was logging the data. We had been at this for 3 hours, and the silence in the cabin was broken only by the clicking of keys and my occasional, sharp intake of breath. Detective Calder had told me to look back 10 years. I had thought he was being dramatic. I had thought the kitchen renovation was a singular, manic episode brought on by Kendra's recent eviction. I was wrong. Row 12, I said, my voice sounding hollow. A credit card opened with Citigroup. Date opened 2 years ago. Limit $10,000. Status charged off. Due to non-payment. Marisol stopped typing. 2 years ago, you were in Boston then. I was, I confirmed. And the billing address for this card. It is an apartment complex in Portland, where Kendra lived with her ex-boyfriend. I kept scrolling. It was a graveyard of financial abuse. There was a personal loan for $5,000 taken out 3 years ago from a predatory online lender with an interest rate of 28%. There was a financing plan for furniture, a sofa, a bed frame that had gone into collections. There were inquiries from car dealerships I had never visited. She has been doing this for years, I whispered, the realization settling in my gut like lead. Small things, things under the radar. She used my social security number like a master key. She was counting on you not checking, Marisol said, her voice grim. She knew you had a high credit score and a high income. You were the host organism, Gabrielle. She was just siphoning off enough blood to feed herself without killing you. Until now, the kitchen renovation. The $60,000 that was not a siphon, that was a hemorrhage. She had escalated because she was desperate, or maybe because she had gotten away with the small thefts for so long she thought she was invincible. I picked up my phone and dialed Renee Hardwick. It was Saturday, but she had given me her personal cell number after I sent her the video of the forgery. Renee, I said when she answered, it is worse than we thought. Tell me, she said. I gave her the highlights of the credit report, the loans, the cards, the defaulted payments that were about to start hitting my credit score now that the collections agencies were merging their data. Okay, Renee said, her tone shifting from advisor to general. We are changing strategy. We are not just waiting for the police to pick her up on the fraud charges. We are filing a civil suit immediately, Monday morning. Why? I asked. I thought the criminal charges were the priority. They are, Renee explained. But in cases like this, family members often try to claim that there was a verbal agreement. Kendra will stand in front of a judge and say, my sister told me I could use her credit because she wanted to help me. It becomes he said, she said. We need a civil filing to create a legal marker. We are suing for conversion, fraud, and unjust enrichment. It puts on the official record that you deny any agreement existed. It cuts off her escape route. Do it, I said. Whatever it takes. I am drafting the complaint now, Renee promised. But Gabrielle, keep watching that property record. If she was desperate enough to forge a deed, she is desperate enough to try to monetize it. I hung up, my hands shaking. The warning about the deed brought the image of the man in the gray suit back to my mind. The man Kendra had paid $5,000 to. My phone rang again almost immediately. It was Detective Calder. Ms. Roberts? His voice was gruff. Urgent. I just got off the phone with the contractor. The one who did the kitchen. Elite Stone and Surface. Did you tell him the payment was fraudulent? I asked. I did, Calder said. He is not happy. He is out $60,000 in materials and labor. But that is not the interesting part. I asked him why he started a job of that magnitude without the homeowner present. Usually, they need a signature on the work order from the property owner. I held my breath. And he said he had the owner's signature, Calder said. He emailed me the contract. It is signed Gabrielle Roberts. It is a decent forgery. But if you look closely, the pen pressure is all wrong. I never signed anything, I said. I know, Calder continued. But here is the kicker. He said he was hesitant to take the job because Kendra was the one on site. So she showed him proof of ownership to prove she had the authority to commission the work. What kind of proof? She showed him a deed, Calder said. A certified copy of a warranty deed. He said it looked official. It listed Kendra Roberts as a co-owner of the property. The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. That is impossible, I said. I am the sole owner. I have the deed. Or I did. Until she stole it from my safe. She did not just steal it, Calder said. She altered it, or she created a forgery to show the contractor. But if she is showing contractors a deed that says she owns half the house, she is trying to establish a reality where she has the right to sell it, mortgage it, or renovate it. Detective, I said, panic rising in my throat. The man in the video, the notary, they were talking about filing something. Check the county clerk's website, Calder commanded. Right now, I am heading to the station to expedite the warrant. If she has filed anything with the county, we have moved from theft to real estate fraud. That is a whole different level of prison time. I dropped the phone and lunged for my laptop. Marisol, I shouted. County recorder, now. Marisol was already typing. Pinewater Ridge County Clerk. Property search. Roberts. Gabrielle. The internet connection in the mountains was slow. The loading wheel spun, mocking my racing heart. I felt like I was watching a bomb timer count down. Search results. 2 records found. The first record was my original purchase deed from 3 years ago. The second record was dated yesterday, January 28th. Oh my God, Marisol whispered. I leaned in, my eyes scanning the line items. Document type quitclaim deed. Grantor Gabrielle Roberts, grantee. The Kendra Roberts Revocable Trust. Date recorded, January 28th, 3:15 p.m. She had done it. She had gone to the county office yesterday afternoon, probably right before I arrived, or while I was driving up the mountain. She had used the forged document, the one I saw her trace on the video, and she had filed it. I clicked on the PDF image of the document. There it was, my signature, or rather, the shaky, traced version of my signature, and below it, the signature and stamp of a notary I did not recognize, likely the favor the man in the suit had mentioned. The document purported to transfer 50% of my interest in the property to a trust controlled by Kendra. She stole half my house, I said. The words felt bizarre, heavy, impossible. She literally stole half my house on paper. Why a trust? Marisol asked, her eyes darting across the legal jargon. Why not just to herself? Because a trust hides the assets, I realized, remembering something Renee had said about asset protection. And it makes it harder to unwind if she mortgages the trust's interest. Marisol, if she takes out a loan against her half of the house, she could strip the equity, Marisol finished for me. She could take out $100,000 against the house, disappear, and the bank would come after the property to get their money back. They could force a sale to recoup the loan. This was not just about living in a cabin. This was a liquidation event. Kendra was not trying to be my roommate. She was trying to cash out my inheritance and leave me with the debt. We have to stop her, I said, standing up. She filed this yesterday. If she goes to a lender today or Monday, we need to block the title, Marisol said. Renee needs to file a lis pendens immediately. It puts a notice on the property record that there is a lawsuit pending. No bank will touch a property with a lis pendens. I called Renee back. I was shouting before she even said hello. She filed a quitclaim, I yelled. She transferred 50% to a trust, Renee swore. It was a sharp, unlawyer-like word. Send me the document number, Renee snapped. I am logging into the e-filing system. I will file a notice of pending action within the hour. That will freeze the title. If she walks into a bank on Monday, they will see the red flag and deny the loan. Is it reversible? I asked, my voice trembling. Can we get her name off? Yes, Renee said, but it is going to take a judge's order. We have to prove the signature is forged. But Gabrielle, listen to me. This is the smoking gun. This proves intent. This proves premeditation. She just handed us the conviction. She almost handed me a foreclosure, I said. I hung up and looked at Marisol. My hands were cold. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving me feeling exposed and vulnerable. She has keys, I said suddenly. She has the gate key. She has the house key. Not for long, Marisol said. She pointed out the window. A white van was pulling up the driveway. Pine water lock and safe. I ran outside to meet the locksmith. He was a burly man named Dave, who looked confused by the urgency in my face. I need everything changed, I told him. The gate padlock, the front door, the back sliders, the shed, and I need deadbolts installed on the interior doors to the office and the bedroom. You want deadbolts inside the house? Dave asked. Yes, I said, and I need reinforcement plates on the door jambs. As Dave worked, drilling into the wood I had once lovingly sanded, I felt a strange sense of loss. I was fortifying my sanctuary, turning it into a fortress. The open, welcoming home I had built was gone, replaced by a secure facility designed to keep my own bloodline out. While Dave worked, Marisol and I sat on the porch steps, freezing our credit. We went through Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. We placed freezes. We set up two-factor authentication. We called the number on the back of every single card in my wallet to request new account numbers. She is going to know, Marisol said, closing her laptop as the sun began to dip behind the tree line. The minute she tries to use that card again, or the minute she tries to apply for that loan, she is going to hit a brick wall. Good, I said. I want her to hit a wall. I want her to feel the impact. She will come back, Marisol warned. When the money cuts off, when the scheme fails, she will come back here. She thinks she owns half the place now. She thinks she has a legal right to walk through that door. I looked at the heavy new deadbolt Dave was installing on the front door. The brass shone in the twilight. Let her come, I said. The locks are changed, the cameras are rolling, and the police have the warrant. But even as I said it, a shiver went down my spine. Kendra had not just been playing house. She had been playing a long, complex game of chess. And now that I had taken her queen, she was not going to resign. She was going to flip the board. I looked down at the driveway. The tire tracks from her SUV were still visible in the gravel. She isn't my sister anymore, I whispered to the cold mountain air. She is just a stranger with my face and my grandmother's nose. And your money, Marisol added dryly. Not for long, I said, but I knew the battle was far from over. The paper war had just begun, and the physical threat was lurking somewhere out there in the dark, desperate and cornered. And a cornered animal is always the most dangerous thing in the woods. The call came at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. The mountains were still wrapped in a gray, pre-dawn mist, the kind that usually made me want to curl up with a book and a coffee. But when I saw Detective Calder's name on my screen, the cozy atmosphere vanished, replaced by the sharp, metallic taste of adrenaline. We have her, Calder said. No preamble, no pleasantries. I sat up in bed, clutching the duvet to my chest. Where Missoula, he replied. She was at an apartment complex on the north side, staying with a boyfriend. We executed the warrant at 4 a.m. Is she... I hesitated, not sure what I was asking. Is she okay? Is she sorry? Is she fighting? She is in custody, Calder said, his voice professional and detached. We are transporting her back to Pine Water Ridge for arraignment. It is scheduled for 2 this afternoon. You do not have to be there. Gabrielle. In fact, most victims prefer not to be. I will be there, I said instantly. It will be uncomfortable, he warned. Your family might be there. I know, I said. I will see you at 2. I hung up and stared at the wall. I did not want to go. The thought of seeing Kendra in handcuffs made my stomach churn with a nausea that was ancient and deep. But I knew that if I did not go, if I did not see the state of Montana read the charges against her, I would never fully believe it was over. I would always wonder if I had exaggerated, if I had been too harsh. I needed the cold, hard structure of the law to validate my reality. I drove down the mountain in silence. The courthouse in Pinewater Ridge was a limestone building that tried to look majestic, but mostly just looked imposing. I parked my car and walked through the metal detectors, my heels clicking loudly on the terrazzo floors. Marisol had offered to come, but I had told her to stay at the cabin. I needed to do this alone. This was between me, my sister, and the truth. I walked into courtroom B. It was smaller than I expected, smelling of floor wax and stale coffee. The gallery was mostly empty, save for a few people waiting for traffic violations, and my mother, Elaine Roberts, sat in the second row, her back rigid. She was wearing her Sunday church outfit, a navy blue suit that she usually reserved for weddings and funerals. She looked small. When I walked in, she turned. Her eyes were red-rimmed, swollen from crying. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw a flicker of hope, as if she thought I was there to drop the charges, to pay the bail, to fix it. But then she saw my face. I was not there as a savior. I was there as a witness. The hope in her eyes died, replaced by a cold, stony judgment. She turned away, staring resolutely at the empty judge's bench. I sat on the opposite side of the aisle, 3 rows back. The physical distance between us was only 10 feet, but it felt like an ocean. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Judge Holloway entered. He was an older man with a face like a topographic map of the Badlands. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and looked at the docket. "State versus Kendra Roberts," he read. The side door opened. 2 deputies walked in, and between them was Kendra. She was wearing a gray jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. Her hair, usually perfectly blown out, was pulled back in a messy, greasy bun. She had no makeup on, and under the harsh fluorescent lights, she looked pale and young, but it was her expression that stopped my breath. She walked in with her head down, looking at the floor, but as she was led to the defense table, she looked up. She scanned the room. She saw Mom, and her chin trembled. Then, her eyes found me. The reaction was visceral. First, there was shock. She blinked, her mouth opening slightly, as if she could not believe I had actually shown up. She had bet everything on my guilt, on my softness, on my fear of public embarrassment. My presence was a physical refutation of her entire strategy. Then, the shock curdled into rage. Her eyes narrowed, her jaw set. It was a look of pure, distilled hatred. She did not see a sister who she had wronged. She saw an obstacle. She saw a traitor. And then, just as quickly, the mask shifted again. She slumped her shoulders. She widened her eyes. She looked at the judge with a trembling, terrified expression. She became the victim, the poor, misunderstood girl who was just trying to get by. The prosecutor, a sharp-featured woman named Ms. Vance, stood up. "Your Honor," she began, her voice crisp and clear. "The state is filing multiple felony counts against the defendant. Count 1 identity theft, exceeding $5,000. Count 2 credit card fraud. Count 3 forgery of a legal instrument. Count 4 tampering with public records regarding the fraudulent filing of a property deed. Count 5 grand larceny." Hearing the list read out loud was like taking a physical blow. It wasn't just "Kendra used my card." It was a criminal resume. The defense attorney, a court-appointed lawyer who looked overworked, stood up. "Your Honor, these are heavy charges for what is essentially a domestic dispute. The defendant is the victim's sister. She was residing in the home. There was an understanding, a miscommunication about finances. We ask for release on her own recognizance." "Miscommunication," Ms. Vance shot back. "Your Honor, The defendant forged a deed to transfer ownership of the victim's home to a trust she controlled. She obtained credit cards in the victim's name and routed the statements to a fake email address. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a calculated, months-long campaign to defraud the victim of nearly $100,000 and her primary residence. The judge looked at Kendra over his glasses. Is it true that the defendant was apprehended in Missoula? Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Vance said. She fled the jurisdiction immediately upon being confronted by the victim. She has no permanent address, no employment, and she has demonstrated a sophisticated ability to falsify documents. The state considers her a significant flight risk. Bail is set at $150,000, Judge Holloway said, banging his gavel. Next case. $150,000, Kendra gasped. The sound echoed in the quiet room. She turned to the lawyer, whispering frantically. He shook his head. She turned to Mom. Mom, she wailed. It was a high, thin sound. Mom, help me. Elaine stood up, her hands clutching her purse. I do not have that kind of money, she sobbed. Judge, please. She is a good girl. Sit down, ma'am, the bailiff ordered. The deputies moved in. They took Kendra's arms. She tried to pull away, her eyes wild. Gabrielle, she screamed, turning to me. Gabby, please, tell them it was a mistake. You cannot leave me here. I sat perfectly still. I watched the metal cuffs click around her wrists. I watched the reality of her actions finally clamp down on her. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down. Mom, you are cruel. How can you sit there and watch this? She is your sister. I looked at the text. Then I looked at Kendra, who was now being dragged toward the door, screaming that I was a liar, that I had ruined her life. I typed a reply. I'm not watching my sister. I am watching a thief. I hit send just as the heavy door closed behind her, cutting off her screams. I walked out of the courtroom feeling lightheaded. The air outside was cold, but I was sweating. Ms. Roberts. I turned. Detective Calder was standing near the exit, holding a large plastic evidence bag. I thought you should see this, he said, leading me to a bench away from the main doors. We found this in her duffel bag in Missoula. I looked at the bag. Inside was a black leather folio. We found your passport, Calder said, your original Social Security card, your birth certificate, the original deed to the cabin. I knew she had them, I said, my voice shaking. She took them from the safe. That is not all, Calder said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a smaller evidence bag. Inside were 3 credit cards. They were shiny, brand new. These were not in your wallet, Calder said quietly. She applied for these last week. 2 of them arrived at the cabin before you got there, and she intercepted them. The third one, she had it expedited to a P.O. box in Missoula. I peered at the cards. American Express Platinum, Chase Sapphire Reserve, high limit cards. She activated them yesterday morning, Calder continued. Right after she left your house, she charged $5,000 to an online retainer for a criminal defense firm in Seattle, and she bought a plane ticket to Costa Rica. The ground seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Costa Rica, I whispered. One way, Calder confirmed. Departing tomorrow from Missoula. Renee Hardwick, my lawyer, had walked up behind us. She had been in the back of the courtroom. This is good for us, Gabrielle, Renee said, though her face was grim. It proves she had no intention of resolving this. She was not fleeing because she was scared. She was fleeing to restart the cycle. She was going to leave the country with your identity and leave you with the debt. She was going to become me, I realized. She has my birth certificate, my passport, my credit. She was going to live in Costa Rica as Gabrielle Roberts. Exactly, Calder said, which is why the judge set bail so high. We showed him the ticket. I leaned back against the cold brick of the courthouse. I had felt guilty about the bail. I had felt a pang of doubt when Mom texted me. But this washed it all away. Kendra had not just wanted a kitchen. She had wanted to erase me. She had wanted to hollow out my life and wear it like a skin suit while she drank cocktails on a beach, leaving me to rot in a prison of debt and legal battles. "Keep the evidence," I told Calder. "Keep it all." I drove back to the cabin in a daze. The sun was setting, casting long purple shadows across the snow. When I turned onto my road, I stopped at the mailbox. I had not checked it in 2 days. There was a single envelope inside. It was handwritten, no stamp. It had been placed there manually. The handwriting was Kendra's. I sat in the car, the engine idling, and tore it open. It must have been dropped off right before she left, before she drove to Missoula. "Gabrielle, I am writing this because you are incapable of listening. You think you are the victim here, but you are the bully. You always have been. You come back here with your fancy job and your money, and you lord it over me. You think I don't see the way you look at me, like I am a charity case, like I am a screw-up. I fixed your house. I made it better, and you treated me like a burglar. I took what I was owed. Gabrielle, Grandma loved me more, and you know it. She would have wanted me to have the house, but you manipulated her into giving it to you. Just like you manipulate everyone. I am leaving. Do not try to find me, and do not think you won. You might have the house, but you have no one. You are alone. And you deserve to be. Kendra." I read the letter twice. There was no apology. No, "I'm sorry I stole $70,000. No, "I'm sorry I forged your name." Just a twisted, delusional narrative where she was the martyr and I was the oppressor. She genuinely believed it. That was the terrifying part. She had rewritten reality in her head to justify the theft. To her, stealing my identity wasn't a crime. It was balancing the scales. I crumbled the letter in my fist. For years, I had let this narrative run my life. I had let my mother and Kendra tell me that I was cold, that I was lucky, that I owed them. I had let them define my success as selfishness. I looked up at the cabin. The lights were on. Marisol must be awake. It looked warm. It looked solid. "I am not alone," I said out loud to the empty car. I put the car in gear and drove up the driveway. I had a lawsuit to win. I had a house to reclaim. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being the bad guy in their story, because I was finally the hero in mine. The sound of a sledgehammer hitting stone is a violent, jarring noise, but to me, it sounded like a symphony. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, a cup of coffee in my hand, watching the contractor I had hired, a local man named Jim, who actually checked property records before taking a job, swing the heavy hammer down onto the gray quartz countertop. The stone, the cold, lifeless slab that Kendra had spent nearly $60,000 of my money to install, cracked with a satisfying snap. It took 3 days to rip out the white cabinetry, the subway tile that reminded me of a public restroom, and the sterile LED lighting. I was living in a construction zone again, but this time, it was a reconstruction of my soul. I had ordered knotty pine cabinets. I had found a reclaimed butcher block for the island. I was putting the cabin back to the way it was supposed to be, erasing the white, glossy footprint of my sister's invasion. But while the physical restoration was loud and dusty, the other battle I was fighting was quiet, meticulous, and taking place entirely on my dining room table. Marisol had turned the living room into a war room. We were preparing for the trial, which was set to begin in 48 hours. The district attorney, Ms. Vance, was capable, but she was overworked. Marisol and I decided we would not leave anything to chance. We were going to hand her a conviction on a silver platter. "We need to visualize the intent," Marisol said, taping a large piece of butcher paper to the wall where Kendra's fake photo had once hung. "The defense is going to argue that Kendra is a chaotic, well-meaning mess who just got in over her head. They are going to play the mental health crisis card. They will say she was manic, that she wasn't thinking clearly." "She was thinking clearly enough to call a locksmith," I said, sorting through a stack of invoices. "Exactly," Marisol said. "So we build the timeline of intent." She drew a long black line across the paper. "Point 1, she said, sticking a printout of the cloud security log to the wall. "October 2nd, you leave. 48 hours later. She arrives. That is not a crisis. That is a schedule. Point 2, I added, handing her the shredded change of address form. October 4th. She changes her legal residence. She didn't just crash here. She moved her government profile here. We worked for hours, pinning evidence to the timeline, the photo of her photographing my credit cards, the log of the fake email address creation, the specific dates of the purchases, not food and gas, but high-end appliances, spa equipment, and designer furniture. This isn't the behavior of someone having a breakdown, Marisol noted, stepping back to look at the wall. Breakdowns are messy. This is linear. This is a project plan. Later that afternoon, I drove into town to meet with Ms. Vance at the courthouse. The air in her office was stale, smelling of old paper and anxiety. She looked tired, but when she saw the binder Marisol and I had compiled, her eyes lit up. "This is good," she said, flipping through the section on the contractor, "but I have something better." She pulled a file from her desk. "We deposed the owner of Elite Stone and Surface yesterday," she told me. "The company that installed the kitchen." "Did he confirm the signature was forged?" I asked. "He did," Ms. Vance said, "but he added a detail that destroys their defense strategy. He said he was reluctant to do the job because the credit card name didn't match the person standing in front of him. He asked for authorization. And Kendra didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't say. My sister said it is okay." She pulled a document out of a folder. She showed him a certificate of trust listing her as a trustee with full power of attorney over the property. I felt a chill go down my spine. She forged a power of attorney, too. "We are still looking for the physical document," Ms. Vance said, but the fact that she had it ready, that she presented it calmly to overcome a vendor's objection, that proves she wasn't operating on impulse. She had a toolkit of forgeries ready to deploy whenever she hit a roadblock. That is systematic fraud. "They are going to say she was abandoned," I said, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at me. "My mother has been telling anyone who will listen that I abandoned Kendra, that I forced her into this by being unsupportive." Miss Vance looked at me, her expression softening for the first time. "Gabrielle, the jury is going to see the numbers. You do not accidentally steal $70,000 because you feel lonely. You do not accidentally forge a deed because you are sad. We are going to show them that this wasn't a cry for help. It was a hostile takeover." She handed me a blank notepad. "I need your victim impact statement," she said. "You will read this at the sentencing, but I want you to write it now. It helps to have it ready." "What do I say?" I asked. "Do I talk about the money?" "No," she shook her head. "The insurance might cover some of the money. Talk about what the money can't fix. Talk about why you put deadbolts on your interior doors." I drove back to the cabin as the sun was setting, turning the sky a bruised purple. I sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, the notepad on my lap. "I am the victim," I wrote. The words looked strange. I had spent my whole life being the strong one, the provider, the one who fixed things. Being a victim felt like a failure, but as I wrote, the anger that had been simmering under the surface began to boil over. "It is not about the kitchen," I wrote. "It is about the fact that I check my credit report every morning before I check the news. It is about the fact that I flinch when my phone rings. It is about the fact that my sister looked at my life, the life I built with 80-hour weeks and missed holidays, and decided it was a resource she was entitled to harvest. She stole my safety. She turned my sanctuary into a crime scene, and she made me question the love of my own mother." My phone buzzed. I looked down. It was a message from my cousin Sarah. I hadn't spoken to her in 5 years. Sarah. "Hey, Gabby. I heard about the trial. Aunt Elaine is saying some crazy stuff, but I just wanted to say, I believe you. Kendra pulled a stunt with my brother's car a few years ago. Not this bad, but shady. We just never talked about it. I'm sorry I didn't warn you." I stared at the screen. A crack in the wall of silence. Then another message, this time from my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister. "Linda, you are tearing this family apart. Drop the charges. Gabrielle, Be the bigger person. God is watching. I deleted Linda's message. I saved Sarah's. I am the bigger person, I said to the empty air. I am the person who is stopping her. Accepting that I was the villain in my mother's story was a painful, jagged pill to swallow. It felt like amputation. I was cutting off a limb to save the body, but as I sat there, listening to the wind in the pines, I realized that the limb had been gangrenous for a long time. I was just finally acknowledging the rot. Inside, Marisol was asleep on the sofa, surrounded by legal pads. I walked past her and went into my office. I couldn't sleep. The trial was tomorrow. I sat at my computer and opened the cloud security footage one last time. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for a reason to forgive her. Maybe I was looking for a moment of hesitation on her face that would prove she was still human. I clicked on the file dated January 7th, the video of the forgery. I watched Kendra trace my signature. I watched her hand the paper to the man in the gray suit. I paused the video. I zoomed in on the man. Detective Calder had called him Miller, a disbarred notary, a small-time crook. But something about him bothered me. He wasn't nervous. He stood in my living room with the confidence of someone who had done this 100 times. I opened a new browser tab. I searched Miller Notary Pinewater Ridge fraud. A few old news articles popped up about a notary public losing his license for irregularities in estate planning documents. But then I saw a photo in the Pinewater Gazette from 10 years ago. It was a picture of a town council meeting. And there, standing in the background, shaking hands with a younger version of the man in the video, was a local real estate developer named Silas Thorne. I froze. Silas Thorne was the biggest, shadiest developer in the county. He was known for buying up distressed properties, usually from elderly people or families in probate battles, and turning them into luxury rentals. I looked back at the video. The man in the suit Miller was handing Kendra a business card. I zoomed in as much as the resolution would allow. It was blurry, but the logo was a distinctive green mountain peak, the logo of Thorne Associates. My heart hammered against my ribs. I scrubbed the video forward to the end of their conversation. I turned the volume up to maximum. "Once the trust is recorded," Miller said, his voice gravelly. "Mr. Thorne is prepared to offer a cash buyout for the 50% interest, fast closing, no inspections." "And the price?" Kendra asked. $200,000, Miller said. "Cash? I can do a lot with $200,000, Kendra whispered. I sat back. The breath knocked out of me. This wasn't just Kendra trying to steal the house to live in it. She was selling me out. She had found a predatory developer who wanted my land I had refused to sell to him 3 years ago, and she had cut a deal. She would steal half the title, and he would buy it from her for pennies on the dollar, effectively forcing me into a partnership with a shark who would eventually force a partition sale to get the whole thing. She wasn't just a thief. She was a corporate raider. I looked at the screen, at the face of my sister. She looked so pleased with herself. She looked like she had just won a game. She hadn't just found a notary. She had gone out and found the one person in town who wanted my property as much as she wanted money, and they had conspired to dismantle my life. "She didn't do this alone," I whispered. "She had a buyer lined up." I grabbed my phone and texted Miss Vance. It was 2 a.m. "Gabrielle. I found the link. The man in the video works for Silas Thorne. She was selling her half to a developer." This was a conspiracy to liquidate the property. I didn't expect a reply. But 3 dots appeared instantly. "Ms. Vance, bring the laptop. We are adding a conspiracy charge." I closed the laptop. The final piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. It wasn't just greed. It was a transaction. My sister had sold me for $200,000 cash. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark woods. I felt a strange sense of calm. The confusion was gone. The guilt was gone. Tomorrow, I wasn't walking into that courtroom to fight my sister. I was walking in to dismantle a business deal. And business, as I knew better than anyone, was something I knew how to handle. The trial lasted 5 days. But inside the courtroom, time seemed to compress into a singular, suffocating tunnel of evidence. Ms. Vance, the prosecutor, did not play to the gallery. She did not make grand, theatrical speeches. Instead, she built a wall. Brick by brick, document by document, she constructed a fortress of facts that no amount of tears or family guilt could penetrate. On the first day, she presented the financial forensics. The jury watched in silence as the screen displayed the spreadsheet of unauthorized transactions. It was not just the big-ticket items like the kitchen renovation, it was the daily attrition of my life savings, the $300 grocery runs, the gas station fill-ups, the subscription services. The jury saw the pattern of a parasite feeding on a host. On the second day, she brought in the witnesses. The contractor, Jim, testified that Kendra had presented herself as the co-owner, showing him a forged document to bypass his concerns. The locksmith testified that she had called him to re-key her home, acting the part of the distressed homeowner perfectly, but the turning point was the video. Ms. Vance played the clip from my office security camera. The courtroom was dead silent as the jury watched my sister sit at my desk, photograph my credit cards, and then systematically trace my signature onto a deed transfer document. There was no sound in the video, just the scratching of a pen, but the silence in the courtroom was deafening. It stripped away the misunderstanding defense instantly. This was not a sister borrowing a credit card in an emergency. This was a professional-grade forgery operation. On the third day, against the advice of her lawyer, Kendra took the stand. She wore a soft pink cardigan and little makeup. She looked small, fragile, and utterly sympathetic. When her lawyer asked her why she did it, she wept. "I was desperate," she sobbed, clutching a tissue. "I was terrified. I had just lost my apartment. I had no money for food. I knew Gabrielle had so much. She has always been so lucky. I thought she wouldn't mind helping me get back on my feet. I intended to pay it all back." She looked at the jury, her eyes swimming with tears. "I just wanted to be safe. I was drowning." It was a good performance. I saw a few jurors soften. I saw my mother, sitting in the front row, nod her head vigorously, wiping her own eyes. Then Ms. Vance stood up for cross-examination. "You say you were drowning, Ms. Roberts," Vance said, her voice calm and level, "and that you intended to pay my client back. Can you explain to the jury how you intended to pay back $60,000 with no job?" I was going to get a job," Kendra stammered. "Is that why you hired a disbarred notary to transfer 50% of the property title to a trust you controlled?" Vance asked. "I just wanted security," Kendra whispered. "Security," Vance repeated. "We have evidence that you were in contact with Silas Thorne, a local developer. We have an email chain recovered from your laptop where you discuss a cash buyout price of $200,000 for your half of the property. Was that the security you meant, selling your sister's home out from under her?" Kendra froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The drowning victim mask slipped, revealing the calculator underneath. "You weren't drowning, Ms. Roberts," Vance said, leaning in. "You were liquidating. You weren't looking for a life raft. You were looking for a payout. Isn't that true?" "It is not fair," Kendra snapped, her voice suddenly sharp, the tears vanishing instantly. "She doesn't even use the house. She is never there. Why should she have it all while I have nothing? It is not fair." The sudden shift from sorrow to entitlement sent a ripple of shock through the jury box. She had shown them exactly who she was. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood up. I held Marisol's hand so tightly I thought I might break her fingers. "We find the defendant, Kendra Roberts, guilty on count 1, identity theft, guilty on count 2, credit card fraud, guilty on count 3, forgery, guilty on count 4, grand larceny, guilty on count 5, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. Guilty on all counts." Kendra let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. My mother gasped, burying her face in her hands. I sat perfectly still, letting the air rush back into my lungs. It was over. The gaslighting was over. The truth was now a matter of public record. The sentencing hearing took place 3 days later. The judge asked if I wanted to make a statement. I stood up. I had written 3 drafts, but in the end, I only brought a single index card with me to the podium. I looked at Kendra. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit now, her hands cuffed to her waist. She refused to look at me. For 30 years, I began, my voice steady. I was taught that family is a safety net. I was taught that my role was to catch my sister when she fell. I did that, over and over again. I paid the bills. I cleaned up the messes. I absorbed the chaos. I took a breath. But I learned something in this courtroom. I learned that to my sister and to parts of my family. I am not a person. I am a resource. I am a bank account with a pulse. When I stopped giving voluntarily, she decided to take forcefully. She did not just steal my money. She stole my peace. She stole the one place I felt safe, and she did it with a calculation that chills me to the bone. I looked at the judge. This was not an act of desperation, Your Honor. It was a hostile takeover, and I am asking you to sentence her not just for the money she took, but for the trust she murdered. I sat down. My mother stood up next. She was shaking. "She is my baby," Elaine cried out, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You are heartless, Gabrielle. You have ruined her life over money. You stole my daughter from me." The bailiff moved to silence her, but I stood up one last time. I looked my mother in the eye. "I didn't steal her." "Mom," I said, my voice cutting through the room. "I just refuse to be her victim anymore. You can blame me if it helps you sleep, but I am done paying for her sins." Judge Holloway banged his gavel. He looked at Kendra, his expression stern. "Ms. Roberts," the judge said, "the evidence in this case paints a disturbing picture. You did not just make a mistake. You engaged in a systematic, predatory campaign against your own sister. You utilized professional forgers. You planned to sell a property that did not belong to you. That requires a level of malice that this court cannot ignore." He shuffled his papers. "I am sentencing you to 5 years in the state penitentiary, with eligibility for parole after 3 years. You are also ordered to pay $112,000 in restitution." "5 years," Kendra screamed. "No, you can't." "I am also adding a special condition to your probation," the judge continued, raising his voice over her screams. "You are to have no contact with Gabrielle Roberts for a period of 10 years. And," the judge added, pausing for effect, "I am unsealing a final piece of evidence submitted by the prosecution this morning regarding the restitution amount." The courtroom went quiet. Even Kendra stopped screaming. "The prosecution uncovered a loan application filed 2 days before your arrest," the judge read. "An application for a small business line of credit in the amount of $250,000, under the name Roberts Consulting, using Gabrielle Roberts' social security number and the cabin as collateral. The bank blocked it only because Ms. Roberts had frozen her credit hours prior." I felt the blood drain from my face. $250,000. "If your sister had not acted when she did," the judge said, looking directly at Kendra, "you would have bankrupted her completely. This confirms that your greed had no limit. The sentence stands." The gavel came down with a final, thunderous crack. I watched the deputies take Kendra away. She was not looking at me anymore. She was looking at the floor, defeated, finally stripped of her delusions. My mother collapsed onto the bench, sobbing, but I did not go to her. I walked out of the courtroom, past the cameras, past the whispers, and into the sunlight. 6 months later, I sat on the front porch of the cabin. The air was warm, smelling of pine resin and wildflowers. The kitchen was finished, the white, sterile laboratory was gone. In its place was warm, honey-colored wood, a reclaimed butcher block island, and a deep copper sink that caught the afternoon light. It wasn't exactly the kitchen I had before it was better. It was stronger. I had reinforced the subfloor. I had upgraded the electrical. I had built it to last. I sipped my coffee from a new mug, a handmade ceramic one, heavy and grounding in my hand. I was alone, but I was not lonely. Marisol had gone back to the city, but she visited often. Aunt June called every Sunday, and I had even received a letter from my cousin Sarah, asking if she could come visit in the summer. I had lost my sister. I had lost my relationship with my mother, who still refused to speak to me, choosing to nurture her grievance rather than face the truth. I had lost a significant amount of money that the restitution payments, if Kendra ever made them, would likely never fully cover. But as I watched the sun dip below the jagged silhouette of the mountains, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and triumphant gold, I realized what I had gained. I had gained my life back. For years, I had been living in the shadow of my family's expectations, making myself small so Kendra could feel big, giving away pieces of myself to keep the peace. I had thought that love meant sacrifice. I had thought that being the strong one meant enduring abuse in silence. I knew better now. I looked at the heavy deadbolt on the front door. I looked at the security camera blinking softly in the corner. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. Drawing a line isn't an act of war. It is an act of survival. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the clean, sharp mountain air. It tasted like freedom. I was Gabrielle Roberts. I was the owner of this cabin, and for the first time in my life, the only person occupying my space was me. And that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Please leave a comment below with your location, so we can see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed this journey of justice and resilience, please subscribe to Emma Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Stay strong, and see you in the next video.